welcome back to another episode of Doctor in a Bikini. It's like I just did this 30 minutes ago. So funny. Glass half full. I got through halfway through the episode, and all of a sudden my computer did like a little error, and I looked at the audio. I was like, that's weird. It looks like a flat line. Unplugged it, listened to it. Those whole 30 minutes, it sounded like a whisper because somehow my smart iPhone here, I didn't mean it like it's not. That sounded way more millennial than I meant it to, but it's just like my phone is smarter than me sometimes, guys. And somehow with my new laptop and my new phone, if you listen to episodes like previously, throwback to when my phone got ran over and my laptop crashed in the same week right before moving. Anyways, I'm still figuring out all of the new editing technology, and somehow these two sync every time without notifying me. So it was recording from my phone from the other side of the room. Like, how? Who does that? Anyways, well, if you read the title of today's episode, it's mostly about things that you don't expect, whether that's things recording they aren't supposed to, but more so in the context of competing. So I did a little Instagram story earlier saying, hey, if you have any tips that you would like to give past you with competing, or things that you feel like would have been helpful to know, things you would tell a friend just to prepare them ahead of time. Today's topic actually got inspired. I was at a 30th birthday this weekend, and I met a new friend. And as most of you listening, I'm sure you've probably been in this scenario before where you're at a social gathering and somehow it gets brought up that, oh, Shannon does bodybuilding, or, oh yeah, Shannon probably can't eat this, or, when's your next show? So then comes the conversation of, I could never do that. I bet it's crazy. And it just got me to thinking about where my mindset was at with what to expect going into it, and common misconceptions there are, ways that we can just better set people up for success. And I've done previous episodes kind of on this, but I think it's always relevant because we're always learning more. And to be honest, the longer this podcast is around, the more that I've learned. So I don't think this theme will ever not be a recurring theme in the podcast, because I'm here to try and make your lives easier. I'm here to make sure that people don't feel alone. I love posting little tidbits of just tips on how we can be better. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. Like I said, I'm going to share some of what people posted first. I was giving a raw and vulnerable reaction with the first few that I posted. I didn't get through all of them, so some of them I've already read, some of them I have not. But before I get into that, I wanted to highlight a soft launch of Posing Prehab with Doctor in a Bikini. So if you've been here for a minute, you probably noticed before I was doing videos on Posing Prehab on my Instagram, which was basically like tips on how to improve this in your back pose, or tips on how to improve thoracic rotation for your front pose. And I want to really quick circle back about what that is, like what the heck is Posing Prehab. So starters, again, if you're new here, I have my doctorate in physical therapy. So I did go to graduate school, and my superpower, I guess, or my job is my eyes can identify the problem, or my hands can. So what does that mean? It's like when you bring your car to a mechanic, right? You're like, hey, my car is making this weird sound. Can you figure out what the problem is? And it's the mechanic's job to be like, hey, actually, this in the foundation is what the main issue is. Here's the symptom you're getting, but here's what's not running right in the vehicle. And obviously, I'm not a mechanic, so I'm not going to word it, but you get the point. So I thought, with my dance background, my physical therapy background, and then obviously I'm in the bikini division, hence Doctor in a Bikini, I figured to mesh all the worlds together, my job and my goal is to eventually get out of the clinic space completely. That's part of the major changes that have been happening lately. So now I'm just sharing most of it instead of waiting for everything to be perfect and then telling you that I'm doing it. So hopefully that's also relatable for somebody listening that is currently launching something new. Maybe they're dealing with imposter syndrome. Maybe they're like, oh, I don't want to start sharing this until I know what I'm doing better. Or I don't want to tell people I'm doing this and then maybe I change my mind, or I have to change my prices, or maybe it fails completely and then, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. So this is me practicing what I preach, and it's not perfect. It's a soft launch. I have been teasing it for a long time, and I think it's just time for me to open the floodgates and have clients come in. So I have been informally treating people, going to people's gyms, or not treating, because that's not what I'm doing, but helping people, going to people's gyms or creating programs virtually. But today was my first in-home client, which was super, super fun. Now I actually get to utilize the Doctor in Bikini space, not just for podcasting, but for my videos and for my posing prehab clients. So we worked a little bit on, I'll just give like an example. Let's see. We were talking about her glute. So the advice she was given was to kind of push her glute towards the audience or towards the judges, right? So then as a PT, she's saying, hey, I'm getting this back pain. I'm getting this glute pain. This feels wobbly or unsteady. And then I give her tips and tricks on, well, what if we tweak this? Or what if you put your pressure through this part of your foot instead? What happens if you change the placement of this limb? So it's been super fun for me just to build and to troubleshoot. So if you are interested, or if you know someone who's interested, this is me opening the floodgates to say that I am officially accepting people. There was a while where I was kind of turning people away just with the move and everything that I wanted everything to be perfect. So I was, instead of just doing perfect inaction, what's that saying? Oh gosh. Something about perfect inaction is perfect. Yeah. Imperfect action is better than inaction. And lately I was prioritizing being perfect and just not taking action. So if you are interested, or if you know somebody, DM me on Instagram at all of these shenanigans, or send me an email at drinabikinipodcast@gmail.com. Then we can set up a consultation and just see, what part of the program fits best for you. But without further ado, we will get into some of these real and raw responses about things that these people did not expect. So let's pull up the first one here. First one is from Lindsay. She said, I think for new competitors, the tanning experience can be the most vulnerable part of the competition if they are not prepared. I know I wasn't. Lindsay, let me tell you, I was just laughing about this at said party this weekend. So I let Kelsey, one of my friends, borrow my DIY pro tan pack because she was going to a bachelorette. She's like, I wanted to try it. Do you mind if I try it? I said, sure. Void the face, careful of Cheeto fingers, things like that. Here's these gloves. Here's how you apply this, sending her voice notes and all that. And Kelsey says to me, yeah, it was just so interesting, like staring at myself back in the mirror. And it's just like such a weird, it's just a funny thing, like taking the little sponge and trying to get to all the crevices and things like that. And I said, yeah, I don't know what's worse, like looking at yourself alone in the mirror like that and like, foot up and you're, it's a real pretty sight. Or I feel like my most recent experience, because now that I think about it, out of all 10 shows, or has it been 11 shows? I should know this. I don't know off the top of my head right now, but out of all of them, I have only done non-DIY 2 times. So this most recent one and my first one were the non-DIY times. My first experience, it was actually a pretty private tanning experience because it just involved me going to this woman's house, and there was maybe one client that was leaving as I was starting. So I was laughing because, speaking of not being prepared, when I was at USA's at the end of my season this year, I went ahead, I said, you know what, let me just see, because if y'all listen to the episode about Old Green and Gracie, you know why. I was like, all right, fine, I will just appease this person and I will get my makeup, hair, and tan done professionally, and we'll see how big of a difference it makes judges wise. Spoiler alert, for me, it wasn't that big of a difference. But anyways, I was laughing because here I am with this shower cap, and I'm like, I just feel like I look like Squidward or something because I'm just, hobbling over to the little tanning booth. They spray me down and they're like, all right, like stick your cheeks out and lean forward and arms up, kind of like a robot, and you're just vulnerable, It's all out there. And then the part that was like, this is interesting. When I was all done, they're like, okay, go over by the fans. And they arranged their fans like it was some sort of seance. It was just a circle of fans, and there's all these other tan Squidwards that are just sitting there with their arms up, and they all are just. And all I could think about, I was in front of the fan, and I'm just like, sticking my butt back towards the fan, and I'm just like, where do I look? Like, not that like being around other women is like weird. It's not, but it's just kind of funny because like really, you had to face us all in a circle, like arms up, staring at each other. Like I don't. So I just was like looking at the ground, like staring to the abyss because I was like, I don't really want to make eye contact with somebody like this. So yeah, that's a good one, Lindsay. I would say be prepared for any type of experience. Some of these I've probably talked about before in previous episodes, but yeah, be prepared. It's an experience. It's going to be stinky. Lindsay said that too. She's like, embrace the stink. Yeah, I feel like show day, you would think that bodybuilders are looking forward to the food the most. Oh no. I'm looking forward to no longer shying away when someone, turns on the faucet or flushes the toilet. I'm not having to run to the door to try and avoid the splatter. I'm looking forward to that shower though, I don't want to smell like BO and Protan anymore. I just want to smell like a normal human, especially because after the show, everyone's hugging you and you're like, I have never smelt like this in my life. And I live in Arizona, guys. So, like, it's a stinky place, but there's nothing quite like the show stink. But Lindsay is like, embrace the stink. So, you know what? All power to you, girl. I agree. And just embrace it. It's all part of the experience. And she said, oh, that's a seamless transition. She goes, and just remember that every show is an experience. There will be lots of different energies. The reminder to just be responsible for your own energy and to take everything as a learning experience and create fun and magic where you can. See, this is why I love Lindsay. She is so right. Um, Again, I've said this before. Do whatever you got to do to protect your energy and have fun. And I'm going to give you the reassurance here that looks different for everybody. I've said before, I wish that I was the person that, you know, was social butterfly and going from, suitcase to suitcase wherever all the girls are and just, introducing myself and saying hi. I mean, I have a podcast for goodness sake, and I'm not that person on show day. And it's not because I don't love meeting new people. I do, especially when people come up to me and say, I listen to the podcast. I love that so much. It's the coolest freaking thing ever. I'll take a picture with you. We'll swap Instagrams. I have a new friend. It's so awesome. But otherwise, unless I'm in line, I don't usually talk a whole bunch because one, I'm just trying to prevent getting in my head. Two, I am the person that I literally look like I'm napping backstage. And part of that is because of my body's love for water. Like I said, my body knows the desert. So it loves to hold on to water when it can. So walking around and being on my feet and being social, for me, that's like a quick ticket to bloat express. So I'm typically enjoying my energy, laying down. So my tip to that is don't feel pressured for the show date experience to be what people tell you it's supposed to be. Some people are like, it's so fun, you have to meet everybody, you have to walk around, and if that's you and that's your fun, do it, but don't feel bad if you're like, honestly, I'm just gonna chill and then I'm gonna have fun when it's time to be up and around. I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. The next one is from Kim, and she said, one thing I didn't expect is that a lot of people won't understand why you're doing it, and it will seem like you will start to seem like a narcissist because you're obsessed with the progress. Oh my gosh, I can't read right now. But seems like you're obsessed with yourself in an unhealthy way. I love what she said right there, and I want to unpack it because I think that's so true. And again, there's plenty of relationship episodes on my podcast, but I wish I could tell you the numbers right now, but I've got Sunday brain, if that's a thing. But yeah, I think that's something that people don't always expect, but I'm going to tell you like an absolute expect that not everyone's going to understand. Whether that's certain friends, significant others, maybe work. I think we're lucky when people are very understanding and supportive of what we got to do for our schedules, how we've got to, change our habits. But I think it's fair for some people to not understand because they didn't sign up, you did. And I like to bring it back to, like how we grew up even. Some people, maybe they grew up in a very religious family or community, and maybe being exposed, for lack of better words, is not super supported by the family, or, maybe you grew up in kind of like a strict household. So I don't know, for me, a lot of things that were originally preached was like, being ladylike and being polite. And so I know I was nervous. It's like, oh, what are my family members going to think? And I want to post this. I want to be proud of my post, like she said, and not seem narcissistic or not be judged for, ooh, I'm posting what someone else is perceiving as sexual content when it's not. It's athletic content. And she actually brought up a good point to me too. She says male bodybuilders can post their pictures, but it's not sexualized. But if a girl does it, then it's seen as, oh, she's posting all these pictures of her abs, and oh my gosh, she's letting her butt show on her Instagram stories. What would her kids think of that? What would her husband think of that? Or what if her patients see that? I know for me, I get nervous because I definitely have patients that find me and follow me, and I'm like, well, I guess I guess people are just seeing this. But you know what? It's, for me, again, it's not sexualized content, but not everyone's going to understand that. So I think the biggest takeaway there is, don't let other people dim your light. And if something is not your boundary, if something is their boundary, that doesn't concern you. The only thing that matters is what you're doing, why you're doing it for you, and what your boundaries are. So if you don't want to post something, if you don't want to take pictures because you feel some sort of way, great. But if you're not honoring your progress and not documenting your progress, that was something I've said in another episode, that I regretted not documenting more pictures and videos my first year, because what a transformation the first year. Holy cow. I only have like my check-in photos, but I didn't take lifting videos. I didn't take pictures at the gym, and I wish I did. So let that be a reminder that it's not vain of you to do that. It's for you. You're building your own photo album, if you will. So don't let other people crash your party. All right, this one I had to take a drink of water before, because it's got some stuff to unpack. I will say the first part, so when I was originally going through these, I didn't read them at first. I just did screenshots. But I will say one that came up quite a bit was cost. Cost, how expensive it was, how big of an investment the sport is, how much money I'm going to spend. That was probably submitted 10 times, was the money. And I will say I agree. I think if there's something you're going to be prepared for going into it, is knowing what your investment is, knowing your why, looking into your options, looking into what things cost. There's plenty of options. Like, I know Collections by Collins, who does my suit, she has rental suits. And if you look back at my photos, you can look, the blue suit that I've worn for most of my shows this year, that was a rental. It was not tailored to me, but it fit like a glove. Shout out to Austin. Yeah, so I think rentals can be scary, because you're like, well, is it going to fit? Is it going to be janky? And I can at least speak for Collections by Collins. She's fabulous. So that's one way you can save money. I mentioned the Pro-Tan. I mentioned I've done DIY hair makeups. I mean, there's things you can do for sure. But no matter what, it's an investment between show fees, buying your competitor card, at least for the NPC Federation. You have to buy your NPC card every single year. There's show fees, there's coaching fees, there's gym fee. But I will say, you can also argue when you're leading your life in this way. I know for me, I spend way less money on restaurants. Going out for coffee is kind of debatable, depending. But I think there's a lot of things that do shift, Not that I was usually someone going out to the bars quite a bit, but I mean, if you're someone that was, that's going to change, and you're going to save money there too. So I will say some things can be a little bit of a wash, but ultimately, yes, you're going to be spending money. She said, I did my research beforehand, so I was planning for this, but I feel like a lot of new people may not know it's still a very expensive hobby. Accurate, can concur, Megan. She says, peeing with a tan, the amount of times I'm running to the tanning people to fix me. I did the pee funnel first 2 shows, not for me. Dixie cups have been my lesson learned, cutting out the entire bottom, holding TP to each side. And then she put like the chef's kiss hand. Never did I ever expect getting messages about how somebody pees with a chef's kiss hand. But she's so not wrong. She's so not wrong. I agree. I got sent a funnel in a pack by a brand, and I didn't post about it because, for one, could you imagine? Could you imagine that ad? Trying to post like my review about this like easy pee thing. Like, oh man. Yeah, so I did get in a box, but it doesn't work for me either. So I'm with you there. I don't know how much I want to talk about it, but I will say I'm pretty ballsy on show day. I don't use anything at this point. I just kind of like, I know my pelvic floor PTs are cringing, but I just kind of like hover and, hope for the best. And usually I'm pretty good. I've only had to get fixed, I think, 2 times. But yes, she's so right. There are people backstage that have to fix you. I know some people are very worried about, like, what if you have to poop on show day? Yeah, that is terrifying. I don't have a tip for that. just just be assured that the tanning people will totally help you out. It happens. Shall I say shit happens? The next one she says is communication with partner. Sex frequency will change. Absolutely. Yes, I feel like women are pretty good about talking about that in like the Facebook groups out there. But just in case, again, if you're new here, please don't be discouraged and please communicate to your partner that there are actual hormonal changes happening in your body. So it's not because you desire them less. It's not because you love them less. It's not because, oh, you're about this lifestyle and now your whole life changed. And then, what does that mean? No, this is temporary. Those are very real things that change, but it will not stay like that. So I think that's important to communicate to your partner is, hey, per my research, people say that this can happen. Just in case, like, I want to start that line of communication. Like, if you're starting to notice that maybe you're feeling less affection towards you, let's talk about ways that I can make sure you feel valued and we feel strong and connected. I think setting yourself up for that conversation in the very beginning before it's relevant can be really helpful. Another point says, research your coaches and know what you need out of a coach. Just because others have a great or bad experience with a certain coach doesn't mean they are or are not a great match for you. This is kind of trial and error. Okay, that one wasn't me. This is kind of trial and error. So my tip here would be to avoid contracted coaches or maybe only contract for 3 months at a time until you know if you both fully align. I think that is such an excellent point. Contracts can be scary. I mean, again, we just got into a new house and any service that offered a 1-year contract, we're like, no, we want to trial people before we lock ourselves in, So I think especially with someone who's going to be in charge of your health, you really want to feel confident in that decision. So I think for starters, there's an episode I did with my coach, Sally Williams, earlier on, and she does mention some research locations and some resources for you to look into that. Because I think, again, Instagram, things look so happy and fabulous, right? And I love what she said about knowing what you need from a coach. So I think if you were like me when you got into the sport and you're like, I don't know what I need. I just think I want to be here and I just want to see what happens, but I don't know. I remember when I first interviewed with Sally, she goes, "What's your goal?" I was like, "To start competing." She goes, "Yeah, but what's your goal? Are you doing it for, a health change? Are you doing it because you want to get your pro card? Are you doing it?" And I remember when she said that, I was like, "A pro card?" I remember thinking, for lack of better words, not that it's weird, but I remember thinking that it was unfamiliar to me, or I didn't quite understand if someone started and they're like, I want my pro card. Just because I was so far from it, that I didn't really have anybody in the sport that I was trying to aspire to be. I wasn't researching Jennifer Dory. I was like, I want to be Jennifer Dory. Because I know some people, they get into it because they see people who inspired them. So for me, it was hard to know what I wanted, where I wanted to go, because I was like, I'm new here. I don't know. So I think my advice to past me would be, and I got really lucky with Sally, but it would be someone who's going to communicate directly, but is on the empathetic side like me, someone who's really good about explaining the why behind things. I will say now I can put words to it, but I guess credibility was important to me, and not necessarily street cred. I wanted medical credibility. So again, that's why I created this space, is I wanted people to feel like they had a space for factual, real, honest information, not just a place for clickbait and, well, these people have produced these really amazing, genetically gifted, but also hardworking people, so therefore they're the people to go with because they had these stars, you know? It wasn't the name brand that was important to me. I wanted the relationship and the connection. I wanted to feel heard and valued. I wanted to feel like this person could be trusted with my health. I wanted to feel like I wasn't gaslit by a coach because, you know, you hear all these things. So I think writing down the things that are important to you and try and brainstorm some questions maybe around your own values. So that way, yes, you can get an idea of what's online, maybe what statistics they have. Like, say if for you, if you were inspired by Jennifer Dory, ask the coaches, hey, do you specialize in the bikini division? Or would you say that you're more wellness, or do you feel like you have a higher success rate with a certain physique? How many pro cards have you gotten, if that is really important to you? Or what is your coaching style? Will you be going with me to shows? You know, I want a coach that's going to be there, because I think some people assume that when you have a coach, they're going to be with you. But sometimes, especially if they have a lot of athletes or maybe they live across the country, that might not be realistic or feasible for them. So if that's something that's important to you, if that's ever an option, say, how can we do that? And if you do go to shows, is it normal for me to pay for your airfare or your tickets? You know, those are things that surprise people later on. So having questions about what to expect with the check-ins and what to expect with their specialties, and you get what I'm saying. But I totally agree with what she said. Do your research and figure out what's important to you first. I'm scrolling through a couple more that also say cost. Didn't realize how much I'd be investing, but totally worth it in my opinion. Another one said, you're definitely going to pee on yourself, even with the cups. Reverse diets. That's another one that was shared. Yes, I think, oh, I have to like get a drink of water for this. Hold on. That just made me think, if y'all have ever seen White Chicks, when I said that, I was like, hold my poodle. But for real, let me get my water. Okay, I had to fill my water and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I think, again, I know I've done episodes dedicated to this subject because there's so much that you can say, but I think if there's one piece of information, it's actually part of what I shared with that new friend last night. I've probably said this before, but I always tell people, if you're going to get into the sport of bodybuilding, make sure that your number one reason isn't to look a certain way. And I feel like some people can get really caught up in that. And I think even when you go into it saying, no, it's not because I want to look small or because I want to look this way. I mean, obviously that's appealing to think about, but I think if there's one thing that I would set the expectation for, is that you can't control, unfortunately, especially that first time, you cannot control how your mind is going to work after the show. And I think, for lack of better words, it's like almost guaranteed, I would say, that you're going to struggle some sort after your first show. Probably to some extent every single show. You just get better equipped at identifying what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, how you're going to get through that. But just prepping people ahead of time, that first time is going to be hard, and that's okay. And I think if you know someone who's about to compete, try to be there for them and check in on them and give them words of encouragement. Or if you are someone who's about to compete, communicate that. Say, hey, everyone keeps talking to me about this reverse dieting and how, you know, it's kind of like a mind game and how it's really discouraging. You know, what are some things that have helped you if you're talking to your coach or another competitor? What are some things that have helped you after coming off of a show and reverse dieting? You know, how did you communicate with your family about integrating foods back again and how that's a process? I mean, physically, you can't just go back to eating everything. Or, you know, what are some strategies that have worked for you? So I think understanding that you are going to struggle, and that's almost a guarantee, but that's okay. You just have to rely on the people around you and give yourself grace and just really try to be your most mindful self. Because, I don't know, speaking as someone who's been there, and I originally didn't get into competing because I thought that I was going to have really bad food behaviors in relationships. So I think that's also really important to mention that, at least speaking on my behalf, I did not go into it being like, yep, I'm perfect with food. I'm good. I don't have any concerns. I mean, I've had previous relationships with food in not a healthy way, where I thought I had to eat less, or even on, again, really common Facebook groups that I'm on, you see a lot of girls saying, oh, I cheated on my diet, or I binged so hard. Oh my gosh. Like, just know that those things are going to happen. You have to give yourself grace. And I promise you, it doesn't impact your progress long term. Hopefully that made sense, because again, I was trying to summarize an entire episode's content because there's so much that can be shared about reverse dieting. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. And it's interesting, I'm scrolling through the next few, and literally the next 3 I'll say cost and reverse dieting. So if that doesn't hammer home how important setting that expectation is, and how, gosh, I wish I had better words right now. Again, there's a whole episode on, I think, reverse dieting like a pro or something like that. But yeah, just know that you're not alone, and don't feel shameful. I think that's a good way. Don't feel shameful if you're struggling with that, because I think whenever I check in with girls that I know after a show, I say, hey, how are things going? Almost always they'll open up to me about how they binged or how they messed up their reverse, which if we could just delete that terminology completely, you're doing your best. Don't worry about doing your reverse perfectly. Yes, are there benefits of executing a plan and being super thorough? Of course, but do those people have to learn the lesson first? Yes. I did not reverse like a pro my first time. My second off season, I did not reverse super well. I feel like it gets better with every single show, but you're only human, Let's see. I'm scrolling through. Okay. This one says, how if you don't have a coach, it's the hardest thing ever. I would love to actually bring someone on who's self-coached, because I know there was a girl actually at a show last year I did. She literally was her own coach, and she made her own bikini. Like, made it. I was like, whoo, wow. I was like, that is a superstar right there. I don't even know how she did that. She looked great. I think she won like the whole dang show. So good on her. But yeah, I agree. I would have a really hard time if I didn't have a coach. I know that there are people out there that are self-made and self-coached, and good on you. But again, circling back to a previous point, those people know what they need. And I think for me, in my ADD brain, I know that I do better when I'm accountable with somebody. So if I have someone to report to, I'll do the work, but just having somebody to share my progress with and check in with is helpful for me. And another one mentioned a relationship with food and just being mindful of your relationships, that way you don't slip into an ED. And I think that's totally valuable. I agree. Let's see. This one's really good. So Maddie says, I think for me at first, I was taking everyone's advice all at once, and it made prep really confusing for me. Like, am I doing the right things? For example, should I be running for cardio right now? Some said yes, some said no way. I think the best advice now would be to find a coach and trust their process. Everyone has their own way of doing things. Everyone's body and prep is different. Find a coach and trust the process they share with you, and don't listen to everyone's advice. Yes, I 100% agree, Maddie. I think I say this a lot as a provider even. I say it really depends. A lot of people are going to give you their own strong-willed advice. Even, again, for prep context here on Instagram, you could be scrolling and there's going to be 3 strong-willed people all telling you that you have to deadlift this certain way and this certain way only. There's some people that I follow that are in an educational space, I'll just say, meaning that there's probably a lot of bodybuilders that follow these groups or accounts, and sometimes I literally can't. I just keep scrolling, because just the absolute nature of, you have to do this, you always do this, you never do this. For me, I'm a big it depends girly. I think it depends for every single person. It's your body. You know what you're feeling. And even Connor, he just asked me, he goes, when are you supposed to do your walking again? Is it okay to do it before your lift or after? Because I did it after my lift today. Is that okay? And I said to him, I said, well, I would argue however it fits into your life best. If I'm sure there's some sort of argument for either way, depending on your goal. But if you're someone that you know that you won't get your steps in if you don't do it first, well, it's better doing it first than not doing it at all after your lift, in my opinion. Some people, they just like the decompression afterwards. Some people like the warm up of the walk before. Some people love running. Some people love Stairmaster. Some people have to lay off the Stairmaster because of their recovery and their legs. So I think she's so right. It depends on you and your body and the plan that you have with your coach. But everybody's going to have an opinion, and they feel the need to solicit that opinion to you. Especially, I feel like it's like the second you step into the bodybuilding identity for the general public, it's like people love to consult with you about their diet and why they do it and their plan. And anyways, sorry, I'm reel it in, Shannon. Next one, Jenin says, I never thought or expected to be able to talk about my digestion and pooping and not pooping so comfortably with strangers. I agree. I also host a podcast, and I think it's hilarious to share funny stories that you wouldn't usually share, which, that reminds me, I had something embarrassing happen the other week, and I meant to write it down for the podcast. I need to get better about that. I'm sure it'll come back to me, but yeah, for me, I think it's hilarious just not taking life so seriously sometimes. But yeah, I do think that bodybuilding creates this open dialogue where it's like, oh man, I can't I can't carb up, or I can't have 300 grams of carbs, otherwise my poop, like, I don't know. Let's see. The next one, Jordan says, hormones. My face broke out so bad right after the show, and I went into a minor depression and didn't want to leave the house. And thank you for sharing that, Jordan. I think it's, again, we have to be real and set expectations that most of you, are you going to be so happy that you did it? Yes. Are there going to be shows and preps that go your way? Yes. And are there going to be some that don't go your way? Unfortunately. I think every single prep, every single show teaches us some sort of lesson. And sometimes it's not without some pain, not just physically, but emotionally. I think a lot of the things that we have to sort through, what we're feeling, our body changing, our hormones changing. Oh my gosh. I mean, I can't tell you which prep was that. Oh gosh. I'm sure I wrote it down, but I know there was one prep this year that I felt like a maniac. I remember I was literally crying with Connor. I was like, I just don't feel like myself. What is happening? And literally, I think it was around the time that I got that blood work. It was. So it was towards the beginning of this year, and I actually shared it on Instagram. My hormones were all over the place. I was like, what the heck? No wonder I'm crying so much. I was like, I'm not sleeping well. I didn't feel motivated. I just felt so like negative energy. Not like bad. I just mean like my battery was beyond empty. So yeah, I think being aware of those changes and being aware of what you're feeling and what feels normal and what doesn't, whether that's in the middle of a prep or after a show, and communicate that to your coach, because maybe it's something that warrants a follow-up with your doctor. Maybe something in your diet needs to be changed. Maybe your exercise and sleep routine needs to be changed. It's just, those are things I don't think people think about when they hear, I'm going to do a bodybuilding show. They just think someone's going to get up on stage in a bikini and heels and it's for funsies and that's it. No carnage. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. This one mentions expenses again, how your taste buds will literally change. And then Julia says how much and how often you have to pee. Oh my gosh. Girl, the struggle of being a healthcare provider with a full caseload. I'm telling you, my first prep, I remember it was, because that's one misconception too, is how much you eat, right? And I'm sure a lot of you, I'm preaching to the choir, when you tell somebody in the community, they say, oh, you're prepping for a show? That's great. You probably eat nothing. And you're like, actually, I'm eating 7 meals today. Or maybe your coach and your meal plan structured differently. But I said, no, I'm eating 7 meals today. I'm actually having to shovel it between every single patient, and I'm trying to run back and forth and pee every 60 minutes and I got to drink my water and I got to go like these steps. And it's just, yeah, you don't realize it, but it's like the more water you drink, obviously, the more you pee. But quite literally, the hormones that are meant to flush out your water as you're drinking water are stimulated as you're drinking more water. So then your body is really like, yeah, let's get rid of this water. And you're like, oh my God, I live at the toilet. Here we go, Jen. And see, talking about bodily functions all over again. Okay. And then I will say I got this one quite a bit, which I think is so sweet. All of them were about the degree of how you'll make friends backstage. One said, the friendships you make along the way will be the real trophy. Another girl said, how nice girls are going to be backstage. And I think I love that that's such a takeaway that people want to set expectations for others is the community, because I mean, I know obviously we're humans. Some people get along, some people don't. But I will say, I was just reflecting on this today. I'm so grateful. There's a lot of women that I never would have met otherwise. I mean, my coach being one of them, a lot of other athletes that, you know, whether they're on my team or they're on another team, I feel like as I'm entering my 30th year, it's cool because there are women that I've met in the last year or two that I really feel like, oh, wow, these women could be my friends. Like, I see us being friends for a long time just based off of some similar life values we have. And I just think that's such a beautiful gift that you can meet people who are going to lift you up and support you and can understand this weird part of your life where there's just these sacrifices you have to make, that you choose to make, I should say, not that you have to make. There's these sacrifices you choose to make for the greater good, and there's things that you love. There's funny things that are kind of a pain in the butt, and yeah, it's just, I think it's really cool how you get to meet people in this sport. Okay, to wrap things up, I wrote down some of my own. I wanted to read everyone else's first, just in case, so that way I wasn't being redundant with my own points. But I was trying to reflect on some things that I didn't expect going into the sport that maybe I haven't talked about on another episode. So, for one, because it's very relevant for me right now, the one thing that I would tell myself early on and that I would not have expected at all, and brace yourself because at first you're going to go, excuse me. I feel like prep actually gets easier. I think that stepping away from prep is actually what became the hard part for me. And I think why that would shock me early on is because in the beginning, prep was such a life change. I mean, I was not in a space where I was prioritizing all the variables. And that's another thing I would say. I never would have guessed all of the little variables over time and how that amounts to so much more. I mean, between your step goal, your sleep hygiene, your stress management, your water intake, your activity level, your lifts, your cardio, all those things. I mean, your your core endurance. It just, I never would have thought that prep would have become the easy part. And it's like once it became a part of my life, now it in a sense that has gotten easier this season, but that was something so hard once you had to rip the Band-Aid off for the first time. And not just because of the reverse dieting, but it's like you hear people who complete an Ironman, you know, when they get to that goal, it's like, oh, well, now what? Now the show is over. The glitz and glam is done. Well, that was my finish line. Where do I go from here? And I think once you get past that initial show, some people, they say, all right, I'm good. I'm done. I don't need to do it again. Some people, they maybe do a second show and then they kind of don't get over that point typically of the body dysmorphia or handling, you know, prep within their lives. And, you know, sometimes they walk away after that second one because maybe it wasn't as magical as the first. But for those of you that stick around time and time again and you do another year and then you do another year, it's so interesting because I feel like prep, it becomes this well-oiled machine where you're like, okay, things are familiar, some things are different, some things are better, some things are, oops, now we have to change that. My body doesn't respond that way anymore. But as far as the mindset and plugging and chugging, it almost becomes easier because you know what to expect. You know that certain things
come in last minute, you know? You're not stressing about, oh my gosh, why can't I see my tie-ins? Oh, that's right. My tie-ins like to take their sweet time, but I should start to notice them around this week, knowing my body. Or, oh, yep, I know how much is going to change in the end. So that way I'm not stressing about if things come together or not, because I know that it literally right up until the last minute, some things just change and come together perfectly. So you just start to get your flow. And then there's this weird transition between it's no longer the prep that's hard. It's, well, now I've done multiple in a row. It's time for me to take a break. Well, now I got to work on mentally and emotionally being okay with that and still staying on the track without losing sight of my goal, whatever your goal is. So I think beginning me never would have thought I would have done one. Never would have thought that I would be here going into my 4th year is insane. Yeah, I never would have thought that prep would be the easy part. This one's throwing it back to baby Shannon. One thing I didn't expect, and I'm thinking of it because I'm looking at one in front of me, I never would have thought all of the cool show swag and the free shirts and things like that you get. I think that is so fun. So finding shows, like I know the Whitney Jones Classic is coming up, finding shows that spoil their athletes and, you know, you get all these fun, I don't know. It's just cool. It's cool to look up ahead of time the sponsors out of there. Maybe there's a cookie brand there. Maybe there's the t-shirts. The first time I got a free t-shirt, it wasn't my first show, it was my second show. So when I got a free t-shirt, it's the cutest, nerdiest thing to think about. I sent a selfie of myself to Sally and I was like, "Look, I got a shirt. They gave us free shirts." I was so taken aback. I was like, "This is the best show ever. We get a free shirt." And the more shows you do, that hit me this year. I was like, "Man, I need to be excited about the shirt still, like the first time I got a shirt, because now show number 10 or 11, it's like, oh yeah, no, there's another free shirt. Oh, well, this one's all right." First one I got, socks blown off. I was like, "Oh my God, this is the coolest day ever. I'm never taking this shirt off." Like, so I think we need to have that energy and treat every show like it's a new, exciting experience. Don't ever let that magic go away. So if you get a free shirt, heck yeah. If there's free cookies, sweet. You get free little, I don't know, like cups or sweat rags or I don't know. Anyways, but I was thinking back about things I didn't expect and I remembered how excited I got about the free t-shirt. And I was like, we need to treat life that way, you know? Another thing I would say, speaking of stage time, as far as what I wouldn't have expected is it being such a struggle or an ordeal with the walk in the heels, not just being able to walk in your heels, but I mean, and if you're an established competitor and you're starting to nitpick it, or maybe you're a new competitor and you're like, "I can't figure this out. I feel like a horse." There's this whole thing that people don't realize whenever a patient or someone asks me like, "Oh, so you just get up on stage and you do a little routine, you get off," and on the outside I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's some stuff to think about," and on the inside I'm like, I'm screaming because like you have no idea between which part of your heel. Because I know some people, they have to walk on the balls of their feet in order to create this effect. Me, I don't. I go heel to toe. Some posing coaches, I know they say don't do that. It causes jiggle. Doesn't cause jiggle for me, so I think you're fine. You got to keep your butt up. You got to do like the swivel of the hips. You want to make your torso look narrow. And then it's interesting, even over time, the evolution of bikini. It used to be this fun, perky, energetic walk. That would have been my time because that I have to work on not being that way. Now it's almost more this like sultry, like I don't know. It's meant to be like a confident, controlled walk, not too slow, not too fast, and then angling your hips a certain way. I mean, who would have thought, just walking in the heels in bikini already is like, oh, but you got to have a certain walk and you just got to show your personality and you got to look at the judges, don't look at the audience, don't look at the floor. It's just interesting. And then, yeah, that's a whole other thing too with the routine. People don't realize going into it, especially if maybe you're self-coached or maybe, I don't know, it's just interesting. Even going through my session with Kim today, helping her out, all the little cues, there's always so many little tweaks and what works for one person does not work for another person. You know, your foot position, where your knee is angled, if you're hiking your hip, if you're turning your belly button, it's insane. I think that's something I never, ever, ever would have thought. In fact, speaking of cringy baby Shannon, there's a picture of me next to, so I don't know if I've mentioned it on here or not, but I have people in my family too that have also competed, you know, in powerlifting, bodybuilding, and my bonus mom, she did a figure competition, and me and my sisters, we were next to her doing our best like figure pose impression. Guys, I purposely have not ever posted that because I don't want to ever offend anybody, and it just so, you know, maybe I will post it, but it is so cringy. The pose I did next to her, thinking that that was the figure pose, that I just kind of wing my arm out and that's it. Yeah, that's funny to think about. And I'd say one more that I was thinking about because I was trying to dig deep. And I get this question all the time. I still don't know quite how to answer it for people, but if I were to set the expectation, whenever people go into it, I feel like even there's a lot of Facebook posts asking, how many weeks would I be able to prep for this show? It's my first show ever. I want to do this show in 8 weeks. Or how long is your prep, Shannon? How long do you take to prep? And even though it's been this long, I don't ever have a formula, at least not at this point in my career, where I know that it takes me X amount of weeks. Like, I think for me and my physique, it seems to, I'm very much like the marathon, not a sprint type of body, meaning my body so far seems to tolerate being on prep for a longer period of time. And it's like a slow burn where it gets better. But I wouldn't say that my body is like a quick responder in the past, at least. Who knows? Because this year my body's been completely different. Off-season body this year is completely different. So who knows what next year is going to look like? That's just like a fun little surprise. But yeah, I think when people ask me how long it takes you to do prep for a show, I'm like, all year round. I mean, you have to set the groundwork in your off season, and I guess technically, usually sometime in January is when I just usually say that I've started prep. But yeah, I don't know. So if y'all know, if y'all have an average, I don't know if I've heard anybody say a reliable number. And I know for each person it depends, you know, what does their off season look like? How much do they have to lose in weight, I guess? Like if they really gained more body fat in their off season, or how long they've been off of prep. For some people, if you've never prepped for a show, it's like you kind of have to be with your coach for a while for them to see how your body responds to things. It's not just like you eat healthy for 8 weeks and then you can step on stage. I mean, maybe if you're just trying to do it for a bucket list item, but for the most part, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it sounds like most coaches prefer to coach you for quite a while just so they can get to know you and your body and your life versus just meeting you, prepping you for, I don't know, maybe they're with you for like 3 months and then they send you right into a show, especially if you've never done bodybuilding before. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a lot more complicated than people realize. You can't just say, all right, it's January 1st, New Year's resolution. I'm going to do a show this summer, you know? And I'm sure there are people who have done that. I'm not saying that's not possible. I just don't think that that's the common approach, like maybe it's thought to be. And even I was, for lack of better words, guilty of that too. When I knew and I was firm that I wanted to get into bodybuilding and just try it, I had no idea. So I just, because everyone was asking me too. They knew that I was prepping and they're like, oh, when's your show? Let me know. I want to put it on my calendar. And I say, I don't know. I don't have a show yet. Next week they see me. When's your show? Do you know? Did you ask your coach? And it's interesting because you're asking your coach, hey, do we think we're doing a show this year? You know, it's just, I don't know. It's tricky to navigate. And I can see that now being deeper in, like if I were a formal coach, I don't really know how I would navigate that. I mean, I would communicate, but it's interesting to think about. When you're on one side versus the other, now you're like, oh, I definitely thought that I was just going to hop right into a show in like 3 months. And that's not really the case for most people. I feel like I want to end it with warm and fuzzies because that's just my personality. But, if you're not a cheesy person and it makes you cringy, then you can just sign off right now, and that's totally fine. I would say the biggest thing that I would not have expected. Oh gosh, see, and I'm going to sound like an inspiration poster or something, but for real, I just would have never thought that getting involved in bodybuilding would have literally changed my life. I mean, I know that groundwork has been set for me in my health. Who knows how many years I've put onto my life? Who knows how this sport has saved me mentally during some periods of my life? I mean, it's taught me how to show up for myself when things are in utter turmoil. It's taught me how to prioritize my life when it's really easy to make excuses for not taking care of myself. It's given me a reason to show up for me at the end of the day. It has transformed my career. Like I said, it's scary to say this on a podcast, but I am now in a space where if you've listened since the beginning, being a healthcare provider can be hard. And I think that can look very different for people. Sorry, I swear I'm not choking up. But yeah, I think being in the sport has given me the strength to be confident in myself with reevaluating where I'm at in life, pivoting in my career, putting myself literally all out there. I mean, you heard my Squidward story earlier where you're like, it's all out there. Yeah, I think it just somehow bodybuilding made me a better person, a better spouse, a better friend, but more importantly, I treat myself better, and I think that there's no price that you can put on that. I never would have thought. Yeah, just when you say bodybuilding, it sounds like one thing. And I think that's what I'm getting to. It sounds like one thing, but it's so multi. Oh my gosh, what's the word? Oh, words are hard. Oh my gosh, the word I was thinking of was multiplanar, like PT words, but it's so multidimensional, I guess. Is that a word? I feel like, oh my gosh, if there was a t-shirt for phrases that Shannon says a lot, I think I honestly say, is that a word on this podcast a lot. I feel like that shouldn't be a frequent phrase of mine, but it is. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. It's just, I hope if there's one takeaway, it's that it's not a vain sport. It's not something that is narcissistic. It's not something that is selfish in a bad way. Sure, there's some downsides, just like with everything. And I think that it's something that you're meant to take little breaks from. It looks different in every season, but I never would have expected that the act of bodybuilding would be such a crucial part in my life. And I hope that connecting with others and listening to this podcast and hopefully finding a coach and friends that support you, I hope that you feel the way that I feel about bodybuilding. It just breaks my heart when I hear people talk about a poor experience that they had, whether that was with a coach or with a team, or maybe they just weren't prepared. And again, that's just what made me think of today's episode is how can I help hopefully create a resource for someone to listen to on what are some things that they can expect. And today was kind of a more fun spin. Again, I really encourage you just to look at the episode titles of previous episodes because I do cover things like that to help people. And a lot of these episodes, they kind of are like a love letter to past me, like things that I have learned, things that I could have done better, or even whatever I'm going through at that time, just things that I'm openly sharing that I'm struggling with. Like I said earlier, with launching a business and putting myself out there and completely pivoting from the clinic role to my business in 2025. So, yeah, it's just we're all human, we're all putting ourselves out there, and it's scary, but it's worth it. So, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and if you think of more things that you didn't expect or have any questions, things you want me to cover, I can always do a part 2. I love Q&As, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, share with a friend, and let me know if you are interested in being a posing prehab client. Have a great week, y'all. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Know everything about me.